All right, let's see if I can get this other Facebook groups in here up and going. I don't know if I can get that one going. Oh, we might not have that Facebook group. Hopefully it's not a big deal. All right. We got 1 and 2. All right. Well, Scott, I don't know if I can do anything about that other Facebook group, but nope, they might be long gone. But welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. It is Monday morning, the 14th of August. We're pretty much halfway through there. That's crazy. And it's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell and joined by, as always, Scott Kennedy. Scott, how did you enjoy staying up until, 3 a.m. to watch some third and fourth stringers play against the Cardinals and for a last second loss?
Well, knowing that I didn't have to be on until Monday morning, I didn't stay up until 3 in the morning to watch the Denver Broncos. I did. I'm up a little bit later now that my kids are older. I did watch the first half live, and then I've watched the second half over the weekend, and I watched the first half again this morning. So there are some takeaways. I know there's a lot of hand wringing out there, and there's some alarm bells for sure, but there's some good takeaways as well. We'll get into all that today.
Yeah. But first, I want to say hello to everybody coming in the chat. We got Kevin Gray saying, morning, Nick and Scott. Big mile high salute to Broncos country. Good to see. He says, we need help on the offensive and defensive line depths. All winters need to get a hold of themselves. All the winters. I don't know what that means. All the winters need to get a hold of themselves. And maybe it's a spelling mistake.
Whiners.
The whiners?
Yeah.
The whiners? Well,
all the whiners need to get a grip.
That's true in life.
Too much drama out there. That's a mission statement.
All the whiners need to get a grip. Well, just whine louder, maybe. Now, Jeremy Sean, morning boys, good. The good from him said Russ Benito in the centers, bad. Rest of the offensive line, kickers, and injuries. Yeah, injuries were unfortunate. We had a concussion to DJ Jones, an eye poke to Josie Jewell, and there was one more injury that's escaping me right now. I'm sure somebody in the chat can get that one out there. But I don't think any of the injuries were super significant. But we'll follow them and see if anything comes from it. We got Massive Attack fan saying, what's the free agent market on offensive line right now? Any recent cap cuts? I haven't seen any notable cuts. We probably are still, a ways away from that, going from 90 to 53. There will be some soon, but Broncos should be, unfortunately, probably looking for some offensive line help, as Massive Attack fan says here. Chase Wellner in the house saying, howdy, y'all. Hope you're doing well. Hope things are great for you. We got Zach Power saying, best gas station for coffee, Pilot and Loves. I got to give a shout out to Casey's out there, which is a Midwest one. They also have breakfast pizza that you can get that's greasy and terrible for you, and you'll regret it, but it's great. So shout out to Casey's as well. But
I haven't had it yet, but knowing everything else I know about Buc-ee's, I would imagine they're got good coffee too. Everything there is first freaking class.
Is that like
it's like the mall for a teenager back in the 80s. Oh, what are y'all doing tonight? Oh, we're gonna go over to Buc-ee's and do what? No, that's it. We're just gonna go to Buc-ee's.
Vibe. Yeah, no, it's I have not been to Buc-ee's. I see all the support of them. What is that in the South? Is that a region? Is that an East Coast thing?
I'm not sure where they started. There's a couple in Georgia. I think it may have been Texas.
Okay.
That's where they've started, but yeah, it's Walmart meets Sam's Club meets, but it's all Chick-fil-A. Think of all that with like Chick-fil-A style of service and customer service and cleanliness and all that type of stuff. While you get your gas, you can go in and it's a spectacle. That's for sure. I almost feel like it's going to be like Yogi Berra though. Like, oh man, that place is too crowded. Nobody goes there anymore.
Well, I've seen the logo, but that's about it. So endorsement there, free advertising. We love that on a Monday morning. Donald Willison in here saying, good morning, Scott, Nick, and Broncos country. U.S. Dave in the house. Buenos Diaz. Michaela Israel says, good morning, Broncos country. I got our guy, Michael Ronquillo, always coming in with support. Hope you had a good weekend. He says, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and Buckham. Seth's in the house and morning, Nick and Scott, Broncos country, Buckham. Good to see you. We also got our guy Dom. Good morning, Nick and Scott, Broncos country. Broncos offensive line really needs to improve for all that money put in. Yeah, we're going to get into it. And here's Michael with his super chat. Thank you so much, Michael. We appreciate you coming in. And Ryan coming in saying, Wilson looked good. Defense looked good. Offensive line is sketchy so far, but Peyton will fix that. It's the first real action game they had. People need to chill out. It's a small sample size and people wait a very long time for the real football. And once you get it, it's all built up and everything. People are going to be overreactionary. I mean, we don't have much to react on. So any sort of reaction other than just purely observational is going to be overreactionary, but I would put the offensive line. I wrote an article on it that the offensive line is now on watch. I'm not panicking yet, but the level of concern went up a grade in the DEFCON scale just because they looked that poor against a Arizona team that was, let's just call it out, Scott, devoid of difference makers along the defensive line, and they were winning a lot of matchups.
There's something I always like. Don't try and predict the preseason games. It's almost like trying to predict a bowl game. You kind of ask yourself the question, who does this matter more to? And in a sense, this game still was kind of in the balance for that. You've got a new coach. The Broncos still had a lot to prove out there. When I'm looking at the offensive line, I'm going to try and sugarcoat this a little bit. Were they good? Especially, the first team? No, they weren't. All right. Did they have all of their guys out there? Well, they were missing a right tackle that they spent a huge contract on. Bolles is coming off an injury and hasn't played in a long, long time. Okay, there's your two tackles. Miners was fine. If I'm going to take away the biggest positive takeaway I could take from this game is Lloyd Cushenberry was adequate at worst. Good. He was good. We've talked about going from a liability to just being bad would be an improvement. He was good. There was no problem out there. I spent a good bit of my time watching the interior line because I think that's where your biggest questions are. And I think that's where the biggest hole is. And it wasn't just Cushenberry. The interior line played well. You've heard me dog on them all the time about their inability to come off blocks and absorb pressure coming from stunts. I saw second team guys. I saw Lloyd Cushenberry. I saw all those guys do combination blocks. Cushenberry would snap. He'd push on a tackle. He'd come off and pick up a stunt coming from the other way. That didn't happen last year. I'm watching the point of attack. They're not getting driven back 3 yards right off the snap of the ball. Now, part of that could be personnel, Nick, but it was happening constantly. So your biggest concern for me right now is he might not be the highest paid one out there anymore, but is Garrett Bolles at left tackle was my biggest concern on the O-line coming out of this game. Will that improve? It should. Can you absolutely write that in Sharpie that it will? That's a concern.
Yeah, Garrett Bolles looked really poor overall, and he's coming off of a broken leg, which, he missed time, but it's not like he's coming off of an ACL or meniscus or something. Broken legs happen. Not a Liz Frank injury like that robbed Brian Clady of the rest of his career. So he looked really poor in this game overall. I'll disagree a little bit, Scott. I thought that the Arizona Cardinals blitzed Russell Wilson 5 times, and Russell Wilson was only 2 for 5 on those blitz attempts. Now, one of them was the cover 0 Jerry Jeudy touchdown, which, Jeudy sent that safety into orbit on the move that he did.
If you don't jam him, and if you're in that coverage and he gets off the line, you are dead meat. Dead.
Pretty bad call.
You've
pretty bad call in my opinion. Yeah, you can't let him get a free release on that. But overall, the blitzes really did seem to affect the offensive line. I don't know how much of that is the Broncos not really being up to speed on what to do in those situations. But we saw a lot of 7-man pressures from the Cardinals. I think I counted at least 2. There might have been 3 on there, and the offense struggled with those overall. But Russell Wilson, in over half of his dropbacks, I think it was like 63, was under pressure in that, and he was great when there was no pressure. I have these stats here. Logged, kept clean. He went only 5 attempts where he was kept clean, but he went 5 for 5 for 10.6 yards per attempt. That's great. But under pressure, 2 for 8 for 40 yards. So his rating is salvaged a lot by that touchdown under pressure, but that's the big takeaway. It's not just the offensive line struggled, but Russ struggled when under pressure. Most quarterbacks will, but it was pretty emphatic the difference there. So we'll see how much that changes. Maybe they're going to do a lot more if the offensive line looks this bad. Maybe they're going to try to do a lot more quick hitters to isolate Jerry Jeudy, because that's your hot rate. If they're sending pressure, that means Judy's probably got the ability to get open quickly, and so you're going to need to be looking for that. But I didn't really love a lot of the decisions in the hot reads on those pressure snaps as well overall. Not to criticize Russ too much. He played pretty darn well overall, I think, considering the limited sample size, but definitely the pass protection and ability to handle pressure struggled overall, and that's probably my biggest concern coming out of this game.
Yeah, the question, is Russ washed? No, that usually goes with physical tools when you start talking about that, right? Or, if he's been concussed so many times, he doesn't know what the hell he's doing out there. That clearly wasn't the case. He was throwing the ball well. I had no problem. I didn't see any problem with the passing game. Looked good, like you said, when he had time. I didn't realize he was 5 for 5, but when he had time to drop, set, and throw, it was coming out hard. The arm's still there. He's still got the fastball. There were a couple of drop passes, and again, how many teams are sending 7 in a preseason? Okay, but that's trial by fire, and you should get better. And again, the unit of the offensive line, you and I talked about this a lot, about like if you were to get a center in September, the plug and play and them coming together cohesively. Well, and it's still not even the first 5 that are out there. So I expect the offensive line to play better. The one-on-one situations could be a little bit concerning. Again, it's too small a sample size to say, okay, Lloyd Cushenberry is fixed. Let's see. He played well. I had no problems with Lloyd Cushenberry. Garrett Bolles, I'm not going to then on the same case say, okay, Garrett Bolles is done. He's not coming back from that leg injury. It's too soon to tell. Garrett Bolles is better than he played, and that was as good as Lloyd Cushenberry I've seen him play. So if I'm a biased Broncos fan, I'm going to say, okay, Lloyd Cushenberry has been fixed and Garrett Bolles will be fine. As an analyst who's a little bit more cynical, let's see how Garrett Bolles progresses coming back from that injury. And let's see, as it starts facing higher levels of competition, if Lloyd Cushenberry can then hold that level that he has begun the preseason with, which was a very positive beginning.
Yeah. Happy with Lloyd Cushenberry. I thought, even like Luke Wattenberg looked okay out there, other than the field goal where he got, almost whack-a-mole, and it was bad. He was on his butt almost instantly, and that's him losing that rep was the reason that field goal got blocked or was tipped. So that is a concern. I mean, he's still a pretty small overall offensive lineman for size, but I thought he looked okay out there. Garrett Bolles looked poor. I guess we can kind of go down some rumors from this offseason that the Broncos did approach him with the restructure, and then he was on the market very quietly. I don't think the Broncos got anything back. We heard all about Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, but I do think there was a moment there where they're like, hey, what would we get for Garrett Bolles? So obviously there is some question marks about how much they are in love with him. And long-term speaking, I mean, if he looks this bad, even if he doesn't turn around, if he's not playing at a great level, they can save a boatload of money moving on from him next year. $16 million in cap savings with only $4 million dead cap. So I think your left tackle spot is something that you are thinking long-term. Luckily, the Broncos, if Bolles does struggle, it would just be a 1-year problem where they could move on from him from that and at least have the ability to go on. I mean, $16 million could get you a pretty good tackle out there next season, just using that money on somebody else. So Bolles was the most immediate long-term or immediate concern for me coming out of this game because he just did not look great. Hoping the next one will be better. Long-term concern, Scott, I was not super duper impressed with Ben Powers in pass protection. I thought that guys were getting him around him. There was a couple batted balls where I think it was LJ Collier just used length and speed around him. And Ben Powers looked like a, former day 3 pick who has some limited foot speed out there. There was always we were excited about him coming over, but there was always questions, not a huge athletic profile coming from a really wonky style offense with Lamar Jackson under center. And, who was the offensive coordinator there for a while? Greg Roman also kind of plays a weird style. So how translatable was that? I was not super impressed with Ben Powers in his first rep, considering the amount of resources and the finances the Broncos put in that left guard spot.
Yeah, I can't say I watched a ton of the Ravens and focused on Ben Powers. I mean, you're thinking if they're spending this much money, there must be a reason. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, it must be an immediate upgrade. All I really had to go off was PFF numbers, which were like, okay, is it? Was it? Was it a great? So we're gonna have to wait and see. McGlinchey, though, is a definite upgrade in the running game. I think we feel pretty good about that. I've watched a lot more 49ers than I did Baltimore Ravens. Old NFC guy here, I'll have to admit. If they're not playing the Broncos, I probably don't watch them. But yeah, there's concerns there. It should take – people don't want to hear give it some time, but I still think Ben Powers is an upgrade over Dalton Reisner. I don't think that's a huge going out on a limb there.
It's not a stretch.
McGlinchey is better than what you were able to put out at right tackle last year. And frankly, Cam Fleming played okay last year, and he played well over the weekend, played on Friday night. And going back to your point, Albert, good to see you. Appreciate you. Going back to your point, there is no way, and I said this 2 years ago over a guy that you paid a lot of money for that ended up doing a whole lot in Graham Glasgow. There is no way Garrett Bolles plays on that contract next year. No way. No freaking way. If they approach him for a restructure and he says no, he's gone. They'll cut him. They could get him an extension and see if you can knock that number down. But when you are having Garrett Bolles playing the way he is, and you're talking about, like you said, $20 million with a 4, or is it 18-2? It's
16 saved, 4 dead.
Yeah, it's cap hit next year. It's 20 against 4 dead. So yeah, it's 20-4. $4 million dead cap hit against a 20 million cap hit. You save 16. No way, man. No way. Even if he plays at a Pro Bowl level, they'll come at him with an extension. If he's a Pro Bowler this year, they will give him an extension and lower that cap number for next year. Either way, you're going to get more money back next year from Garrett Bolles, one way or another.
Yep. But yeah, very concerning. In my opinion, are we making a mountain out of a molehill? We'll find out. But the offensive line is very much under the spotlight now going forward, and it's something we both harped on this season. If we're going to get the best out of Russell Wilson and this style of offense, I loved the play designs and the play action. I think we had 5 play action attempts from Russell Wilson in this game, and I think he went 4 for 5 on that. No, 3 for 5, but 9.2 yards per attempt. Very efficient, working the ball down the field. The play action, I thought designs looked good, but in order for defenses to really, unfold against play action, you got to buy into the run game. So if the offensive line looks that bad, we'll see. But caveat on that, the Broncos almost passed the ball a ratio of 2-1 in this game. And I don't know if that's super translatable to the regular season. I'm expecting this to be a much more balanced team. I'm thinking that 2-1 rate was much more about getting those reps in for Wilson and working on some play designs versus what it's actually going to be on Sunday. Because if the offensive line looks this poor in pass protection, you simply can't drop back that much because Wilson cannot get hit that much. And I saw a stat. Wilson was the single most pressured quarterback in the entire NFL landscape in this first preseason week out of any single quarterback that took snaps from a ratio or rate perspective. So concerning, no doubt. Again, are we overreacting? We're going to find out, but it's all we have to react on right now.
Mile High, Jaheim. I'm sorry if I'm gonna butcher your name. Or is it just Mile High? Maybe that's a foreign word for high. But 5280 Jaheim. I know, Scott. How white can you be? If the offensive defensive line keeps struggling, would a push for Kinlaw or the Bengals tackles be considered? I think you're considering everything. You're always, as a general manager, my job is to replace you. That's my job. I'm always trying to upgrade this team constantly. That's why I'm working 18 hours a day. That said, yes, where are you really scouring for players? Big men. Big men. We've done the math on this. There's 90-man rosters right now across, we'll just say 30 teams, make the math nice and easy, 2,700 players. You got to go from 90 to 53. That's 37 players per team. 37 players per team. We'll just call it 40 times 30. There's 1,200 players that are about to be available. 1,200. That's probably 400 or 500 offensive and defensive linemen, 300 or 400 offensive defensive linemen. There's going to be guys out there, and you're going to look and see if you can get better, regardless. And for me, I'm still going to say it. There will be at least 2 300-plus pound signings on the defensive line before week 1.
Yeah, and I think after this week, a little bit of red flags for the offensive line as well. I could see them bringing another tackle. I thought for a 4th-string offensive tackle, Isaiah Prince was fine. He was out there for the first team and the 2nd string, but he was not great. There's a reason that he was kind of the butt of the jokes coming out of that Bengals Super Bowl because he was just getting whipped in that Super Bowl and that run up to them. And I thought, I've been a big Cam Fleming proponent, Scott. I thought Cam Fleming struggled a good bit in this game in pass protection. Again, it was much more of a drop back work on that, but I thought that he was on the ground far too often for an offensive lineman in this game. So it was a struggle there. I think the Broncos might be on the market for an offensive tackle. I'm not sure if that's who 528 here is talking about. Thank you so much for the 499 super. If he's talking about the Bengals offensive tackles, but I know that Jonah Williams wasn't over the moon about potentially kicking to right tackle or guard when the Bengals brought in Orlando Brown Jr. They paid big money last year for Lael Collins, so I'm curious if Jonah Williams would be available. At least, he's not been great out there, but I think he's been better than Bolles from what we've seen last season and so far this year. So definitely, they're going to be making calls. I think that the Broncos are going to be looking at tackles.
Miguel coming in with the stars on Facebook. Thank you. He says, "This a Jawan James 2.0?" Just kidding. No, I don't think so. I think you'll get a lot more from Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey than you got from Jawan James. You better. You better. Appreciate you with the stars and the support. Switching gears a little bit before I forget, I took in my notes. There's a guy out there that got significant playing time. I'll be a little surprised if he's even there this weekend. If he makes it to the weekend, he had such a nightmare, and that was Tremon Smith. Corner number 23 was he just my notes say Tremon Smith - nightmare. Just had a nightmare of a game. You feel for him. I mean, it was bad, and then the final play of the game right there. Looks inside while guys coming right across his face to the outside in a line coverage against the goal line. He just had an awful game. And if he's on the bubble, he might not make it to this weekend, Nick.
Yeah, he really did struggle. Bad game, special teams wise, defense. They're paying him a solid money. And you got a lot of younger cornerbacks who thought had pretty good games. I mean, Sang Bassi gets beat on a slant, but then comes in and has a pretty good interception there, good reading. I mean, Bassi is kind of who he is. He's a smart player. He's a good tackler. He's around the ball, but his ability to close on the football just doesn't exist. But for your depth there in the secondary, some special teams, he's fine. Jaquan McMillan, I thought, had a good game. Damari Mathis was more than fine. Theon Hicks, I thought, was okay out there as well. So I think I think that Tremon Smith should be in some trouble. The preseason shouldn't weigh more than the entirety of training camp so far, so we can't speak to that, but really bad preseason game. I wouldn't be shocked at all if we see his name come across the ticker here at some point this week.
My thoughts are if he's out there in the second half, he's battling for a roster spot anyway. Typically, there's some exceptions out there. And if you're, I don't want to pile on, but there were several game-changing plays in the negative. There were at least 3 that I counted that he was on the wrong side of, including the last one. And again, you almost feel bad for him. I don't remember who the safety was inside, but just kind of looked at him and put his hands up. Didn't get all over him. Just it was almost like, I'm not going to pile on, dude. You're gone. I'm sorry. It was rough.
It was rough. So I see the comments on here. Benito had the hip injury, so hopefully he's doing okay. Definitely.
What'd you think of what you saw from Nick Benito?
I thought Benito played great, and that was about as good as I'd seen from him. The hustle play and the awareness play where he backtracked and made that tackle to stop the runner from getting the first down on that third down play was amazing. Something that, still question marks about, edge setting and just, teams are directing at him, but he looked significantly more filled out in that jersey. In my opinion, he looked stronger. I thought that his, when he made contact with guys, he didn't just immediately crumple, not just purely relying on trying to get around them. Saw a little bit more speed to power, which is something that Vance Joseph has touched on as well with Nick Benito. And I thought he looked like a guy who really could end up being, a second rusher on the team. I don't think he's ever going to be the best, your best edge by any means, but if he was an opposite, an alpha, I think you could get away with that. And he'd be a really good number 3, which is what he's setting up to be this season right now. So I was impressed with Benito. I want to see what he looks like on a little bit better playing surface, because I thought a few times he kind of got around the edge and then his feet gave out on him a tad. And I'm not sure if that's a playing surface issue there in Arizona or anything like that. But overall, I was super impressed with him and Jonathan Cooper both. I thought they had excellent games. Always want to see what it looks like against other competition, especially with how bad the Broncos tackles looked. But I want to see what it looks like again next week against the 49ers. Hopefully Benito's okay. But I was really, really, really impressed with Benito and Jonathan Cooper both.
Benito, for me, his go-to is going to be beat you with speed.
Yeah,
that's going to be his go-to. Can I get on? He's coming off the defensive left side. He was going against a right tackle a lot. can I get on the right shoulder of the tackle? And he was showing a good bend. I'm like, if you're listening later, I'm actually, imitating this, except I'm old and stiff. But he's showing good bend to get under that. That was his go-to move several times. That kind of got negated as time wore on. So you want to see just a little bit of a variety in there. Can he do more than one thing? But again, you see the tools. Why are you getting, what are you going for with an edge when you're drafting him in the 60s? Tools, the speed, the backside pursuit. I think that's probably what you're referring to earlier was a play I saw. He's coming off, I think this time he was coming off the right side. I remember him coming all the way across, backside pursuit, and taking a guy down that was waiting for blocks to develop ahead of him. That's the stuff you can't coach. You've either got the tools or you don't. So again, very promising that you can get some production from Nick Benito. I was pleased with what I saw from him as well, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, he looked great. He definitely deserves a game ball, and I'm hoping that he is healthy because the Broncos are going to need some pass rush this year, and he overall had a pretty darn good game. And Jonathan Cooper, both of them did. I thought that, heck, even Randy Gregory, that first drive out there for that defense, Randy Gregory really standing out. So hoping they are all healthy. But the edge spot is a question mark. It's still a question mark long term, but I thought they looked pretty good. Leroy Williams says, good guys, mile high salute. Good morning. I thought Powers and the Belly were supposed to be the beast of guards. The way they blocked my pop-up, my pop can do better than that. Bad football. I think they looked pretty good in run blocking situations. There was a few pass blocking plays where they just didn't look great. The Cardinals were setting pressure 5 times in the 14 dropbacks that Russell Wilson had. So that's a pretty good rate of blitzes for a preseason week 1 game. Pretty surprising on that, but we'll see. It's definitely something. I mean, we could see it. No doubt in my mind, the offensive coaches are reaming those guys after that Cardinals game as well, because the offensive line did not look so great in pass protection. So we'll see what it looks like against a much more talented defensive front and well-coached as well. Steve Wilkes is now the defensive coordinator there in the 49ers game next week.
What feed did you have when you were watching this game?
Oh God, it was the Cardinals, and it was horrible. There was something about the guy, like, he's got something come out of the side of his neck. He went on for like 10 minutes about that. I don't know who that was.
Usually that's how you call a guy a turd. Like, if he's got a lot of crap in his neck, that's usually a bad thing. But all I could picture was David Putty. Yeah, that's right. I don't know if you were a Seinfeld guy, but just look up David Putty, and he sounded just like him from Seinfeld. I'm like, Ron Wolfley was this guy. It was tough to listen to.
It was not
really,
great. It was not good.
No offense to him, but when you start watching, I realized this when the first time I got like MLB radio, and I'm listening to the local broadcasts when I'd be driving and stuff. And some of these local guys are just painful to listen to. This one was tough. This one was a little tough, and they need to know, guys, you're doing a national broadcast. Try and appeal to a wider audience. You're on a national broadcast. Try not to make this everything about the Arizona Cardinals when you're on NFL Network. I know it's hard. You might not be good at it. It's sometimes. All right, that's enough of that. I had trouble with it, dude. I really did.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely muted them at some point and just had it on in the background. But it was a little rough for that. But hopefully you guys aren't thinking this is too rough. We got Clayton here on morning, guys. Smash that like button. Hope you're doing well. Norman Hall says, yo, good morning. Good to see you. I got some Buckies talking here as well. It's great. Keith coming in here said good morning to everybody. Hope you're doing well. Dana comes in and says we need to stop blaming Russ. I don't think it's him. The defense looked pretty horrible, and I'm very concerned. I thought the Broncos defense looked okay overall. I mean, granted, how many just open plays was Clayton Tune just flat out missing and Colt McCoy not looking very good. But I thought the defense, I mean, considering you didn't have Justin Simmons out there, you didn't have Patrick Surtain out there, overall looked okay. I am concerned about the defensive line depth. Jonathan Harris didn't, Buffalo Bills him like the game last season, so I thought it was okay. I was a little bit concerned about the drop off from the first string linebackers, the second string linebackers. I don't know if we can get into some of the rookies as well, but there was a few plays where Drew Sanders was just pulverized and driven way back, and he looked like he was a little bit swimming out there with some of his reads. So there appeared to me to be a pretty big drop off from Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton to the linebackers that came in after that. But I thought the defense had a pretty darn good game, granted against a very poor talent-wise Cardinals team.
I thought Shenaud was okay at linebacker. I thought he had a decent game. And Dana, yeah, I didn't see anything that made me think, oh yeah, Russell Wilson's the problem. I didn't see any that thought never crossed my mind. My thought about Russell Wilson was like, okay, yeah, he can still sling it. Give him some time. He's still dangerous. What else is going on? Because last year, Nick and I talked all the time. I'm like, I don't know. I cannot get an evaluation on Russell Wilson because the offensive line play is so bad. I just can't. There's a comment in here there. I don't remember who it was. I apologize, but it was a good comment saying there's a lot of bad habits that need to be unlearned. And I never felt that more, Nick, than when I was watching the Broncos amongst their 37 pass attempts trying to set up screens. This was one of the, I don't watch enough of the NFL to say that was one of the worst. Of teams that I've watched in the past, it was one of the worst screen teams I'd ever seen last year. Between the immediate pressure, the lack of mobility on the offensive lines, this team still doesn't know how to run an effective screen. That's what I saw. You're going to have to in this offense. They will keep pounding on that, keep pounding on that, keep pounding on that until you get some efficiency out of your screen game.
I wonder, so this is just coming back to Russell Wilson, not to pile on him, but he didn't play a perfect game by any means.
No.
There was pressure in his face a few times where not totally his fault, but he needs to figure out how to create windows for him to deliver the football. You know, that's what do you have, 2 or 3 batted balls in this. So that's, that's always been a concern with him with his height. But that I think can be amplified in the screen game because if guys close space, you have a little bit less of a view and you can't see over those guys really. So that's a concern with him. I also thought a few times he could have done a better job of making quicker reads where to go with the football under pressure and setting himself up to get rid of the football. There was a few plays here and there where his placement was a little bit off in the quick intermediate areas that limited the yak opportunity for his receivers as well. But overall, I mean, this wasn't Russell Wilson looked like an MVP type of game, but he did enough, mostly protected the football. That fumble, which was Garrett Bowles getting beat, but Russell Wilson still fumbled it and fell on it, luckily. But other than that, he played a very clean game and was fine. It looked like a game where if you can have a top 10 offense, you can have a good offense overall. A top 10 run game, you can have a good offense overall. But it was a complementary style to a run game, which we didn't really see so much in this game with Mike McGlinchey out, with Javonte Williams out, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a lot's going to come down the offensive line and the ability of that run game for this team to function.
Miguel, appreciate the stars. He says, what are you guys looking at in the game minus the offensive and defensive lines? I just want to see consistency. Well, you've seen consistently bad play. No, I'm teasing Miguel. I felt like, I'm not sure the correct metaphor I want to use on this, but I feel like the perimeters of the Denver Broncos are really good. The edge play I thought was okay. The wide receiver play I thought there was a drop here or there, but I like the fact that they went right back to Jerry Jeudy after the drop, and that gets your confidence up. You hear that all the time. A guy fumbles, let's give it back to him, except Melvin Gordon. Give it back to him and get his confidence. So he drops, let's go right back to him. Get his head back in the game. Get that behind him. I like that. I thought that was good for Jerry, and they made a nice play. And by God, you better jam him at the line if you're not going to have a safety help. Yeah. I just felt like the perimeters of this team are set. They're good. Now, we just mentioned the problems, with some in the secondary. Any of the problems I had were guys that aren't going to be on this team. They're not going to make the 53. Was it Tremon Smith? I've already wiped his name from my head. Tremon Smith, who I kept seeing, penalty on 23. 23 was it was a rough day for 23. That's not going to be him. That over there in that corner could be Pat Surtain. It's going to be a big difference. You look at the receivers. I thought they played well. So what did I see in this game? I saw the perimeters are set. You're okay there. Now it's a big miss. If the trenches, if you're having trouble at the middle, obviously that's a big miss. But you're set up now. When you get the opportunities, you can take advantage of them. Last year, I didn't believe that, Nick. Hey, the line did its job and blocked, and then they missed a receiver or whatnot. I believe now if the line does its job, Russell Wilson and these wide receivers are going to make you pay.
Yeah. I hope so. Don't know. I mean, we didn't have Brandon Johnson out there. Brandon Johnson. We didn't have. Oh gosh, uh, second round pick this season who they just had. They just took. He didn't play in
Marvin
this game.
Mims.
Marvin Mims did not play as well. So I thought Jalen Virgil took care of some situations there. I thought Bandy. We haven't talked about him at all, but I thought he had an okay game all around. Yeah, I think that just circling it back around, I don't think they looked okay. Nobody really was terrible. Other than I think we should have some concerns. Offensive line and kicking game. Both Elliott Fry and Bill Maher looked terrible.
Bill Maher?
I get Maher. Bill Maher is the wrong guy. Bill Maher is terrible. What a horrible show. His time's come and gone. No, Maher. Brett Maher has been. They looked both bad. They both missed kicks. Even the extra points, I'm watching the feed and it's like, oh, that just squeaked in. So
it wasn't just them; it was on the other side too. I thought they missed their 2 extra points that they kicked, and part of that's field conditions.
Yeah.
But Nick, I talk about kickers a lot. It's all mental, this and that. But you bring in a guy who had a pretty public mental breakdown in a game, and a career backup, not even backup because you don't carry 2 kickers. But Elliott Fry has bounced in and out of franchises like a Super Bowl. He's never been a full-time kicker for a team ever.
No.
There was a comment in here, I think it was Kevin Virgil, maybe, who said, I don't think the kicker is still on this team yet. That could be the case. You can sign a kicker on Friday and have him kick on Sunday.
Yeah, they might need to be aggressive on that, but it looked pretty poor. And for a team that still looks like it's finding its way offensively, you're going to have to rely on that kicking game some, man. I thought the special teams overall was not great from the kicking side of things. I will say, though, Montreal Washington had a pretty darn good game. I thought maybe one error in judgment calling for the fair catch a little bit early on that one that he got lucky and it bounced out of bounds. And they got on the 20 rather than, what was it, the 2 or 3. But other than that, I thought Montreal Washington had a heck of a game. Riley Dixon, there's been a lot of praise for him. I was not super impressed with his kicks in this game, and just the kickers themselves, pretty damn poor and worth monitoring going forward. Not my biggest takeaway, though. Biggest takeaway would still be the struggles of the offensive line overall. That's the biggest concern for me. I think that's going to be a make or break for this season. That's going to be the difference between this team fighting for 9 wins and this team fighting for 6-7 wins. And that looked like a 6-7 win offensive line in pass protection in this game.
And there's too many resources being put into it. You've got to have your 8-figure linemen play like 8-figure linemen. If you do that, you're going to be just fine. But that's a big if. Gary says, morning, Nick and Scott. I need to see more from the seconds, but it's still preseason. Go Broncos and buck them. Let me see here. Going through some of those second guys, Marquez Callaway, Kendall Hinton, Cam Fleming, I thought was okay. Luke Wattenberg did a job. I thought Quinn Bailey was okay, honestly. I mean, I know I thought the second and third offensive lines held up better than the first team offensive line did against, the second and third Cardinals when we're talking about depth. Relativity on relativity, apples and apples. I thought the offensive line play improved as the game went on. It's not exactly what you're looking for. And it is preseason. Not only is it preseason, it is game 1 of preseason. Appreciate you coming in, Gary. Richie, I want to clarify on this just in case I wasn't clear. Scott is saying those kickers on the team now are going to get kicked out the door. I bet the front office won't miss those kicks. I'm saying the guys they brought in were questionable from the get-go. There were questions about the guys they brought in, period. We're not second-guessing. We were first-guessing. Elliott Fry was a running joke in Atlanta because he was cut and re-signed like 9 consecutive weeks for procedural moves. It's like we stopped reporting on it. It's like, oh yeah, the Falcons have waived this guy, and then they signed him again on Friday. The Falcons have one of the best kickers in the NFL, so he wasn't ever going to play. But Younghoe Koo also missed 2 extra points. The Falcons kicker changed his number. We're going to put a 7 underneath his jersey. He gave it to Bijan Robinson. What I'm saying is there were questions about those guys coming in, and I agree that those guys might not be the guy. I'm not predicting that they're going to get cut. One of them will. I'm not predicting that one of them isn't your starting kicker. And I know it was a joke. I know. I just want to be clear. I'm not predicting they're going to get cut. I'm just saying it was a little questionable. Tiffany Silver always coming in with the flattery. Says Scott's super handsome as always. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's getting harder as I get older. Who is running back 3? I liked Jaleel McLaughlin. I liked what I saw. We were talking about the physicality in there, Nick.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid to go up the middle.
No, he wasn't.
Slippery. He was slippery in tight spaces.
He was. Yeah. I almost wonder if it's been like a motivational tactic from who we've been talking to, wanting to get back out there about questions about, pass protection and just physicality out there. There's been some scrimmages where he's kind of gone down a little too easily, but when the lights were on, he looked pretty darn well. Number 1 all-time leading rusher in NCAA football history there at Youngstown State. So thought he looked pretty good. Slippery did a good job punching it home. Had a few good missed tackles too. So obviously looked pretty good. I'm excited to see what he can do more of. I thought he just looked like a different running back versus that of Tony Jones and Tyler Beatty. So excited to see what Jaleel McLaughlin can do. And hopefully they can get his nameplate right in the next one. They spelled his name wrong for this game. So definitely should get it right on the next one. Hopefully they allowed him to keep the one of the misspelling, though, just because a little bit funny. Char Baldwin says, good morning, guys. Worried about the offensive line, considering how the Faders defense played yesterday. Yeah, the Raiders defensive line looked pretty good, actually. So we'll see how it plays. But the offensive line looked pretty poor. And something Scott and I have talked about for a bit, you don't have to be offensive tackle no matter what, but when you are a team that hasn't drafted a singular offensive tackle since the 20th overall pick in 2017, it's not a very good usage of resources in terms of premium positions. So just haven't really developed those guys. And Bolles look poor. Hopefully McGlinchey can get back.
Develop guys you don't have.
Yeah, if you don't invest in it, how could you get the tools? I mean, there's not many guys who have that body type and athleticism walking the earth.
What do you expect? I mean, draft 1 a year. You should take one of those guys a year.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be in the first round. It doesn't have to be a top guy, but if I were to have drafted a tackle a year on day 3, one of those guys would be my starter. I promise you. One of those guys would have developed. And again, this isn't even hindsight or second. This isn't hindsight either. We've picked out some guys on day 3 that have been pretty good starters in the NFL quickly in the 3 years that you and I have been together.
Yeah,
you can't ignore the position and then wonder why you're struggling at it and or having to overpay.
Yeah, it was not great by any means as far as the offensive line in that one. So hopefully it'll be good. I mean, it looks like it's going to be an okay offensive tackle class coming up here in the NFL draft. You got Olufakashanu coming from Penn State, who's probably going to be a top 5, top 10 pick. Joe Alt from Notre Dame's somebody who's got a lot of hype. Latham from Alabama has a lot of excitement around him as well. And Georgia has a 5-star super recruit who's going to be eligible as well. That is going to be good. And I think Ohio State has a left guard who's going to do the Paris Johnson route where he's going from guard to tackle this year. So there's going to be some tackles out there right now. I think tackle probably shoots to the first probably need if we're talking long-term draft for the Broncos using a first-round pick for the first time since the Patrick Surtain pick. But we'll see. A lot of season to go, and we'll see if they even have their first-round pick when that time comes around, because the Broncos have had a propensity to get rid of those value picks.
Lawrence comes in, he says, going back to the kicker discussion, why did we even let McManus go? It made no sense, not even about the contract. I'd say it's a little about the contract because the Broncos were on the hook for twice what he was worth on the open market. That was proven. I won't say it was proven because he may have turned down more money to go to Jacksonville. But he's being paid half at Jacksonville what the Broncos would have paid him this year. And you could go back to an old 70s saying about children. Kickers are probably supposed to be seen and not heard. Was one of the problems with McManus on this team. This is Sean Payton's team. This isn't Brandon McManus's team, and he is a very vocal person with the Denver Broncos. And if it's my way or the highway, and he was on the highway.
Yep. So no doubt the Broncos have Westhoff and in there, and Sean Payton. That doesn't seem like somebody who has a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Patience for bad kicking games. So I think we'll see some moves here. What the Broncos have right now, I'd be pretty confident to say that Maher and Fry will not be the kickers going in. And if they struggle like this, then they will be gone, and it'll be a rotation this season. But McManus was expensive. He was not good last season. And you almost wonder if the maybe a little too comfortable in Denver, kind of running the show out there last season, coming out in a ref's uniform and stuff. I think that Sean Payton, not so okay with how comfortable a lot of people were in that building for how bad they were. You shouldn't be comfortable when you suck that bad. So I think that's a lot to do with it.
We had that discussion in the offseason. What were the players saying? I don't care.
Yep.
You haven't earned that right. You haven't been in the playoffs. If the players don't like it, the players, you replace them.
Yep.
A winning organization starts from the top down, not bottom up.
Yep. Exactly. So moving forward here, did want to get a little bit. I see there's conversation now going in here. Somebody who surprised me in this game, and maybe we'll have to have a conversation about the battle, would be Ben DiNucci. I thought Ben DiNucci looked really good overall. You can watch his arm talent. We talked about it in the show earlier, Scott, where Woodside was fine, but the arm just doesn't have the velocity on it. I think actually DiNucci had velocity on his arm. Like I was watching the ball pop out. I was like, oh, that's an NFL arm. Not a great one, but an NFL arm. And Stidham looked poor. Now, granted, Stidham was under almost as much pressure as Russell Wilson and is a little bit less flexible and slippery. So that was a struggle for him. But I thought DiNucci played well enough that maybe in camp coming up here this week, I know they're going to be practicing again today, maybe DiNucci gets some second team reps now. I mean, he's been firmly, squarely, the third team kind of guy out there. But if you can save some money, then maybe we should have a little bit of a discussion about a battle for DiNucci versus Stidham, because I thought DiNucci looked really good in the limited sample size. Again, third, fourth string, not great, but I mean, he was out there firing the football, confident and making good reads. I was impressed.
Yeah, and Stidham should be okay though, just because it doesn't save you any money to cut him. That again, it comes down to economics. It would actually cost you a little bit on your cap if you were to cut him because you gave him a 2-year deal. Going back to surprises, pleasant surprises for me, and it wasn't even, hey, how do you do? I don't really care. Was seeing Christopher Allen back out there was heartwarming. Number 45 coming off the edge. I thought he was crashing down a little bit too much. And they went around him a couple times, but it was great to see him back out there on the field. Yeah.
Yeah. Overall, a pretty good game. Any final takeaways, Scott? That we're at 7:30 now, Pacific time, 8:30. McLaughlin had a good game. Benito had a good game. Alex Singleton was everywhere. I thought he was awesome out there. Fun to see him bringing a lot of energy. And overall, I mean, a lot of positives from this game. Wilson looked better. I thought the designs, getting guys open, was pretty good. But offensive line, it's a concern going forward. It's probably the thing that's going to make or break the season, because I think they're going to try to training wheels Russell Wilson a little bit. He's not going to be dropping back shotgun, full field reads over and over again. It was a lot of play action, half field reads, kind of, rolling, kind of get out there. But that only works if the offensive line is able to hold up a little bit, and they struggled.
I guess my final takeaway was I expect improvement to be gradual, not just wave a magic wand and all of the wrongs that we've seen for the last several years to just automatically go away, no matter how improved your coaching staff is. And will the Broncos play better than we saw over the weekend? Yes, they will. Is this team the finished product? No, they are not. Do I still have concerns in some of the areas that we've always had concern, that we've been having concerns with in the trenches? Yes, I do. Those are my takeaways. There's good, there's bad, there's concerns, but I'm not Chicken Little here saying it's not going to get better or it's absolutely fixed. No, there's work to be done. Do you have some of the pieces in place? Do I think Ben Powers can play better? Yes, I do. Do I think Garrett Bolles can play better? Yes, I do. Will they? We'll see. These guys are getting a lot of money to play better, to coach better, to get them better than what we've seen so far. You need those guys to be better than what you saw over the weekend.
Yeah, without a doubt. And did want to give a shout out. I thought Matt Henningsen in pass rush situations looked pretty darn good. Elijah Garcia with the 2 sacks out there looking pretty darn good. I thought Delarian Turner-Yell had some splash plays, needs to work a little bit better on finishing, but out there doing pretty well and late in the game. But I thought Tyler Lancaster was also okay on the defensive line. So some names we didn't talk about. We'll be back again tomorrow, guys, to talk some more football. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scott Kennedy. I am at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at BFB_pod, as well as at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us at Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, please subscribe to Mile High Huddle, like this channel, like the show, and share it. on your social media platforms. We got a last-second super chat coming in from Troy Bauer, $9.99, with the beautiful dog and the deer in the background of the picture, saying, "Hey guys, I'm out this week sailing the Inside Passage. That sounds amazing. Why don't you take me with? Have a blast. Have a great
Broncos
show.
for
We'll listen
breakfast
later."
from the sea.
Yeah, that's sailing seems like a lot of fun. I'd love to rent a sailboat and sail around the San Juan Islands and a lot of those islands in beautiful Vancouver Island in British Columbia, but maybe
I'm
one day.
okay as long as I can still see land. I don't particularly trust the ocean.
It's
I
because
know
you've
that
been in
sounds
it.
strange. I'm a scuba diver and everything, but I can always see land.
Yeah,
I don't do cruise ships. Maybe it was the 5 times I watched The Black Stallion when I was 6 years old and the opening scene and the boat going down, but I don't want to be on a cruise. But I'd love to go sailing where I could bounce around
the islands. Yeah.
the islands and stuff like that. In fact, I've done a live aboard dive ship where on islands like that. So that sounds awesome, Troy. Thank you for the support, my friend. I hope you are having a wonderful time. And Michael coming in to help close us out too with some finishing stars. He says, "Great show today, Nick and Scott and Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and buck 'em." Thanks, Michael. Appreciate your support as always.
Yeah, absolutely. An inside passage out there in Alaska. So hopefully you'll get to see some orcas out there, Troy. I love to see the orcas. Probably one of the coolest animals out there. So appreciate everybody coming today. Fun show. Appreciate everybody coming in with the super chats. Troy was big in this one. Tiffany Silver coming in and gassing up Scott. Gary Palmer, appreciate you. Gary, Michael Ronquillo, obviously. Miguel Santos, Stephen, Keith Brugman coming in, of course, as well. We appreciate you guys. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. Gary Palmer,
Mile High
Jaheim.
Jaheim.
Yep, Jaheim
Okay.
as well. So you guys kill it today. We appreciate you coming in and supporting the show. Appreciate everybody. Lively comment section. If you're not hitting the super chats, make sure you hit the thumbs up on the way out. We'd appreciate you. Everyone have a good rest of your day. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.